G'day and welcome to Gardening Australia. Today, I'm blowing the dust off and getting back on the tools, tagging along with Will and my new bestie, Humphrey, up the back, to show you what a day in the life of a working hort is all about. There's going to be lots of tips and tricks along the way, and while we're heading to site, here's a look at what else we've got coming up for you this week. We're almost there, Humphrey.
I'm visiting a garden club that welcomes everybody to share skills, compost and a cuppa.
I'm meeting biologist and author Tim Lowe, who's going to explain how urban landscapes and gardens are influencing bird populations.
If you've ever wondered what happens when you throw your creative and cultivated life together, well, I have got the garden for you. Here you got miscanthus, and then I can see the lilies are about to erupt through it.
And we meet a plant collector whose favourites come with cruel intentions. Here we go. Oh, wow. There's a bit of effort go into this
Yeah, it
garden.
certainly is. Yeah, it's coming along nicely.
Will Gibson specialises in designing and installing high-end gardens in Melbourne's leafy southeast. Is this sort of typical of the gardens that you work in?
Yeah, certainly around here, you know, cream and green is the way. Not that much colour, but a lot of form, bit of texture. Formal with a twist.
Recently, he's become something of a social media star, thanks to his videos of gardening maintenance and his cute dog, Humphrey. And there's more around here as well.
Yeah, it keeps going.
Will installed this garden less than a year ago, and it's a classic for this area, featuring layered hedging and tightly clipped topiary balls, with cascading prostrates softening the edges. Not everyone has a garden of this calibre.
Yep.
But there's a lot here that people can take away and apply in their gardens.
Absolutely. You've got to start with good soil. You've got to put a lot of compost and a lot of work into your soils, and you've got to have, you know, good water. And then from there, you can actually build a garden of your own. But getting those foundations right is paramount.
Now, I realise I'm the newest member of the team. I've got to prove myself. I'm keen. Where are we going to start?
I think the Westringias are looking a little bit fluffy and they could be shaped back. So how about we start there?
All right, let's do it.
This is a Westringia fruticosa, so native rosemary.
Yep.
It's incredible. There's so many different varieties. Bluish and grey hues, they flower really well, which is obviously really good for insects and wildlife. They'll deal with a sandy, well-draining soil, but they'll deal with a heavier soil, and they clip really well. The more you clip them, the denser and thicker they become.
Where do you start?
Where do you start? Well, what I tell my guys is when they're first learning how to prune a sphere is I like to get right on top of it, so you can get that perfect sphere around the outside, and our first cuts are going to be all the way around the outside. And all I'm doing is I'm finding that shape. I'm looking straight down directly, and I'm just getting that first ball shape from directly on top. I'm working pretty quick with my shears, but I'm not taking off much at all. Take your time with it. The more time you take, the better it'll become.
That's a beautiful circle.
Yeah.
I can see that already.
Just starting to form that top. If you maybe do that side, then...
Oh, you trust me?
Yeah, well, just. Smaller cuts more frequently is much better than doing those big hoeing cuts. The next step is just to grab the plant and give it a really good shake up a zhuzh.
Yeah.
And you'll find that little bits will start poking out that may have been folded in before.
Yeah.
And then you can do your final wrap around, your final cut, because that bit just spit out then.
Yeah, I find I do a bit of a zhuzh in the morning.
Yeah, you can,
Just
well, these are sharp scissors.
keep them away.
I will.
Keep them
I will.
away. I mean, even looking down here, I can see that's really beautiful. And then over here, again, and that's, I hate to use the word perfect, but it's looking close to perfect.
It's getting there.
Yeah.
Right, so this is the bay laurel hedge. that we planted. And the purpose of this is just to create some screening from the pavement here. But we want to start training it to thicken and to form a hedge rather than going straight up and chasing the light. So to make sure that the plant actually thickens from the bottom, we've got to make sure that we're trimming the top, and so it goes up in height gradually, and then you're not going to lose any of the undergrowth. So this is a really prime example of how the plant will thicken. So we've done the last cut there, and you can tell since that last cut we've got one, two, three, even four.
Yeah.
So that just, you know, with one stem you cut it, it'll create two. With those two you cut them, it'll create four.
Yeah.
And you're just constantly multiplying, and you're thickening the hedge up.
Yeah.
So we'll cut at least sort of 30, 40 centimetres off that, and you'll see some growth coming from the bottom. Doesn't really matter where we're cutting on the plant. It's such a vigorous grower that all we're doing is just forming that height. I mean, you can smell them. That's the
smell that.
That's the other beauty about this plant. When it rains, you can really pick up on the scent of bay.
Yeah.
I reckon that's
You happy?
good. Yeah, good height to work towards. We've cut a significant amount off, and that'll just slowly thicken it up as we go along. If we look back here, that's a lovely level cut.
It is. Yeah, look,
Yeah, very happy with that.
fantastic. What's next?
I think we go on to the next job.
Keeping a garden looking this trim and terrific requires a lot of work. Will has a long list of jobs, so we'll be back with some more tips.
What do I do if I've got green tomatoes left at the end of the season? Well, if you've got a lot of green tomatoes on your bushes when you need to pull them out or the plants are dying off, don't let them go to waste. If they're showing the slightest bit of colour, leave them in front of a sunny windowsill and they'll continue to ripen naturally. Or you can pull the plants out, roots and all, and hang them up. Over time, the green fruit will colour up and then you can take it inside to eat it. Or if you've got lots of green tomatoes left, they can be fried, they can be used to make pickle, or I make a mean green tomato cake. The details are on the website.
Can native plants become weeds? Yes, they certainly can. Take this one. This is Hakea lorina, or pincushion hakea, a much-loved, bird-attracting native plant from the southwest of WA. The problem is, it's actually an environmental weed in bushland around Adelaide and parts of Victoria, where the plant does too well, outcompeting local flora and threatening native ecosystems. Another good reason to always plant local plants wherever possible.
Why do so many indoor plants have wide, flat leaves? For millions of years, plants have evolved for a life outdoors, and so wide, flat leaves are an adaptation, often for shade-tolerant plants, enabling them to soak up the diffused light from under a rainforest canopy. With more surface area, the leaves capture more light in the shade, and with that flexibility, it's easier to find them a perfect spot indoors.
Having compacted soils in your garden can make it harder for some plants to grow. This happens when all the tiny soil particles are squished together, closing all the gaps needed for water, air, roots and soil organisms to move through. This can lead to stunted root growth as there's less space for them to move and can even cause stunting up top. Instead, plants prefer nice, loose soil so the roots don't need to exert much effort to go deeper. Soil compaction is more common on clay-based soils and where there's been heavy foot traffic or vehicles driving over it. Unfortunately, my soil's been compacted from the very start, partly due to excavation works. It's taken me a while to aerate my soil and get it in optimum growing condition by forking, adding compost and building up garden beds. Growing green manure is also a useful and cheap option for large areas to keep valuable organic matter in the soil. Just make sure you mow or cut down the plants before they flower, leaving the roots in the ground. This is really good for the soil because you're not disturbing all the important work they're doing for it. And leaving all that plant matter on top of the soil adds useful organic matter. But there are also some tough native plants like acacia species, hardenbergia and native indigo. These can all thrive in compacted soils, are more drought resilient, and will also help make way for fussier plants. They do this by improving their soil health over time. What happens is their big, deep taproots can break up those clay soils. Some of them will help fix nitrogen into the soil as well, plus the prolific leaf drop can add lots of nice organic matter to the top soil layer. Plants with strong taproots also don't mind compacted soil, like dandelions and other tough weeds. So if you've got some heavy clay soils in your garden, get cracking on some of these solutions.
To keep this cascading version of rosemary doing its thing, all you need to do is trim out these upward growing branches and that'll get it to spread out and block any holes and create this wonderful look. Now, I'm not the only one rolling up my sleeves today. Jane's busy helping a very special Melbourne gardening club that embraces the whole community.
Aha, take a look at this. It's a community cupboard. And what I love about it is that it represents everything that lies beyond this fence. Inclusion, generosity and community, and above all, a wonderful garden. Let's take a look. Seeds Communal Garden in Brunswick is part of Millie, a support service for people living with a disability. Their garden club is a place where members of both Millie and the local community can gather to share skills, compost and a cuppa. Jo Townsend is the garden manager. Yoo-hoo!
Hello.
Hi, Jane. Well, what's happening here? This looks great.
Our summer veg is in production and looking really lush.
It's very bounteous. Look at everything just bursting out of the ground. It's wonderful.
So we've got cucumbers growing over here and
tomatoes, of course.
Tomatoes all through here and big, beautiful zucchini.
Oh, they're ready to pick, I think.
So ready.
So how did Seeds Community Garden get started?
We were established in 2015 when Millie wanted to turn this patch of lawn into something more substantial to enrich the lives of the people they support. So they wanted to cultivate a social environment that was inclusive and allowed people to connect over interest rather than disability and connect with the local community. So Garden Club runs twice a week. We have people from the local community coming in, we garden together, and then we'll sit down at the end and have a cup of tea.
Wow. Oh, that looks beautiful. And Josh, are you having a good time doing the compost?
Yes.
Good. It just looks beautiful compost. I'd love some at home.
Thank you.
And then it's going into the worm farm.
Yep, so we've just got a bit of the compost and a bit of the food scraps we've got in there.
Yeah.
To top up.
The farm.
Josh will come along once a week to help with the composting systems.
Yep. And what do you get out of it?
Just connection to the community, the broader community, and being in this oasis.
It is an oasis, isn't it? Yeah.
Where's my red flower?
Let's go find your red flower. Is it over by the fence over there, Carlene?
Yes.
All right.
We preference a no-dig ways of growing here, which replicates nature, and it's based on permaculture principles. And the other big factor that we bring into it is intention behind everything we plant. So any plant that we put in usually has various uses or intentions, such as flowers that'll bring in the pollinators, or something that's edible, things that can be turned into tea, or even crafted with art kind of projects, creative projects.
This one up here, fine, Carlene?
Yes. Happy.
How's that one?
Yes.
Okay.
So many beans.
You're gonna have to give me a hand.
You want me to give you a hand?
There's 100 in here.
Do you like beans?
Yeah.
How do you cook them? Do you cook them or does your mum do it?
My mum's got a rice cooker.
Do you see all the ones growing along that line there?
Oh my God.
Yeah. Where is it?
Look, the carrot.
Let's see the carrot.
Oh, that's ready.
It's ready. Do you want to pull it out? Oh, knocked you over. Well done.
I can see that this is such a bountiful harvest. How much would you pick out of it?
Well, we record the harvest totals for everything we pick, and most years we're recording around a tonne of food.
No.
Yeah.
A tonne of food?
Yep.
And what do you do with it all?
We all garden communally and then therefore share in the harvest, but we always have excess. It's a very abundant garden, and we also see it as an opportunity to share with people beyond the garden. So we will often donate to food relief organisations, and we have a community cupboard out the front that we share with the community.
That's absolutely wonderful.
And we hold a yearly soup festival, and it originally started with a handful of pumpkins that we wanted to share, and the last few years we've seen over 1,000 people through the garden on that day.
Can I come?
Absolutely, please do.
Greens such as rocket, parsley and silver beet are flourishing, and the orchard is teeming with olives, pomegranates, mulberries, apricots, almonds, figs, feijoas and plums.
I'm going to say something.
Show me something what? Ooh, we're off on a mission.
Okay, mate. Berries. Yeah.
They're raspberries. They're beautiful.
Yeah. I did that. Got
you
them.
did that. You got them. Good.
Yeah.
That's
Thanks.
terrific.
Yeah, berries.
Very good. Now, what about this? Come on, think.
I'm on Zoe.
Zucchini.
Got it right.
Yes, got it right. Nick, tell me what you like about this garden.
I love it. I love doing it.
Yeah.
I got Monday, Tuesday and Fridays.
Oh, that's so good. And what's the best thing that you like doing here?
Digging.
Digging? What, you got muscles? Me too. That's good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think the fan out of more zucchini.
Got lots of zucchini. Oh, look at this one. Celeste. What a beauty. I just love being here, and it's a great stress relief for me. And I love the fact that we connect with the community, so with the participants especially.
Friendships made in the garden.
That's correct, yeah.
They are great.
350 grams.
Go on with it. Isn't that wonderful? I feel like I'm the master controller here. All this produce has just been coming in.
2 carrots.
It's absolutely,
carrots,
it doesn't matter. 2
grams.
carrots is worth its weight in gold.
Yep.
And look at the beautiful plums and the tomatoes and the zucchini. It's all just, and this stuff, this must just grow and grow and grow because they just pick the whole bush.
That was very easy.
So you enjoy coming here?
I love it. All this produce that is given to the community, especially now with the cost of living, people love to have fresh fruit and vegetables.
An exciting new addition to the Garden Club is a food waste dehydrator. It's a machine that turns veggie scraps into ready-to-go fertiliser over an 8 to 10 hour cycle.
Great.
Since it was installed last year in May, we've diverted around 2,000 kilos of food that otherwise would have gone to landfill. It's creating connections and opportunities. So we have people that have set roles to fill the dehydrator and also collect from specific businesses. Thomas Love, who was here before, he goes and picks up from a bakery, and they've started to teach him various things in the kitchen when he goes in. Adam, he is our fertiliser deliverer. So he goes around and he delivers fertiliser, and we donate it to schools, food relief organisations and other places in the community that can benefit from it. It's really hard to put into words what this place means to me, but also to all of the community that are part of it.
Pavlova?
Hey, this is my favourite. Yum.
My favourite too.
But I guess overall it's bringing this sense of belonging, and it's not just belonging in the garden, but it's belonging together as part of this community. And when we're in the space together, there's so much joy and love and just connection and sharing that comes out of it.
I love it. I do love it. Yeah.
It's so special.
So many of us adore birds and what they bring to our gardens, and it's a chance for us to help them by providing habitat and biodiversity and simple actions like not pruning these lower branches and planting with a density that allows small birds to run and hide from predators above. Now, Jerry's catching up with a biologist and author who's studied how what we do in our cities and gardens is affecting the behaviour of our feathered friends.
I'm in Brisbane City Botanic Gardens, and I'm looking at how our urban landscapes and gardens are influencing our bird life. And to do this, I'm meeting biologist and author Tim Lowe, who's going to explain just how our birds are evolving. Tim grew up in Nunda, in Brisbane's northern suburbs in the 1960s. So, Tim, tell me about the sort of birds that you were familiar with in your neighbourhood when you were growing up.
Sparrows were the soundtrack for Brisbane. There were magpies, a lot of the birds we see today. But what amazes me when I think back now are the number of birds that I see every day around Brisbane now that were not part of my childhood.
So what would you see in current Nunda?
Noisy miners moving into Brisbane as an urban bird. See currawongs there now. It'd probably be corellas flying past. Brisbane was pretty much a corella-free zone if you go back then.
Yes,
brush turkeys,
yes.
There weren't any suburban brush turkeys in Brisbane when I was a kid.
You see, I've only lived in Brisbane for 20 years, and here we are right in the heart of the CBD. We're surrounded by abundant bird life. What is it that actually brings them here? I wouldn't think this would be an ideal place for many birds to live.
Cities are very nutrient-enriched. These lawns, they're fertilised, food scraps. You can see the dusky moorhens browsing that grass.
Yes.
So there'd be very high nutrient values in that. There's a lot of fruit. Fig trees have been planted here. We've been hearing fig birds. They'll come in for the figs. Nectar. People are planting nectar sources for birds. The fact that water is reliable for these plants means that in a drought, there's still nectar here, there's still fruit. So you can have really large influxes of flying foxes, lorikeets, honeyeaters coming into the city to feed on the nectar and fruit. And some of these have come during drought times and they've stayed.
Yes.
So, inland birds, crested pigeons, galahs, they were only west of the Great Dividing Range. They've moved in on a good thing. The number of ibis we can see wandering around here, cities are optimal habitat for some birds today.
So with all these changes, have the birds actually changed their behaviours?
Yeah, no, there's been massive changes in habits. It's the welcome swallows that we're seeing flying above the fig trees, nesting under buildings, under eaves, under awnings. You see them on wires. They're totally associated with us. And this has happened really fast.
You've described Australian birds as being big, noisy, aggressive, and more intelligent than any other birds in other parts of the world. Why is that?
So if you think of the noisy miner societies where you can have 200 noisy miners in a colony where they're all acting in a mob, driving other birds away, commandeering resources, would you get that kind of social system if they all had to fly south for the winter? Probably not. So the more stable climate in Australia that fosters more weird behaviours, like bowerbirds and things. If you think of all the weird bird behaviours here, they are with birds that are not migrating. The ibis story seems to be a particularly unusual one. Healesville Sanctuary in Melbourne, they had a free-ranging colony. They had too many ibis. They gave some away to Canberra, some away to Taronga Zoo, some away to Currumbin Sanctuary on the Gold Coast. All of a sudden, the Gold Coast had urban ibis. And now they're a big deal for tourists. So people will give them food, scraps around bins, highly urbanised. And then I remember them suddenly turning up in Brisbane, walking through King George Square, and all of a sudden, there's this ibis suddenly in here. These ibis, they are just as urban as your English sparrows, which, the colonists were bringing out to remind them of home. It's in these very gardens that sparrows were released. First release of sparrows in Queensland in 1869. Where are they? Sparrows are dying out in Brisbane. Lots of introduced birds in Australia are dying out.
Would it be fair to say one of the trends that we're witnessing is winners and losers?
Yes. Some birds, they just can't live with us. They're incompatible. They're shrinking back. Other birds coming in. And sometimes it's a mixed bag. King parrots are one that I think they're still increasing in Brisbane. Currawongs, brush turkeys are still moving in. And powerful owls. The powerful owls in some of the suburban areas in Brisbane have only been noticed in the last few years. Around the number of 80 breeding pairs in the Sydney area that were not there 50 years ago.
Yes.
And so at different speeds in different Australian cities, we're seeing birds, some birds, moving in.
There's an enormous amount of noise for birds to compete with.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. 7 bush curlews, and you've got the sounds of the city, like under the skyscrapers. I mean, it really is remarkable. As we can see, there are lots and lots of these birds that are doing really, really well.
And chief amongst those local bullies, the noisy miners.
Let's see if I wave a sandwich around whether they'll come in.
I can hear them. Oh, you little bugger. Took the whole thing.
I don't actually believe in feeding birds, but I'm doing it here now just to make the point that these noisy miners, these native honeyeaters that have taken over our cities and degraded woodlands, they're a problem. I mean, they're so aggressive that they drive away native birds. But, you know, when we wander around this park, we're not seeing any birds smaller than these.
So what can you do to discourage bully birds from the garden?
What you can do is not feed meat to aggressive predatory birds. These noisy miners, they don't like a thick understory. So the best thing you could do would be to plant your whole backyard in sort of little prickly fine leaf shrubs. That would really limit what they could do. But they are here to stay.
So cities aren't actually ideal for all types of birds.
Someone puts a big lush flowering grevillea in the garden, dripping with nectar. I mean, you don't need any talent to find that food. To commandeer it, it's all about aggression. It's the powerful bird that gets it. Yeah, no, it's not good for lots of birds.
Now, what do you see as the future?
I hope this process of birds coming back into the city or coming in for the first time, that it's not over yet, that we will get some more. I think powerful owls, there's a lot of potential for them to increase their presence. Yellow-tailed black cockatoos, I'm starting to see those in the suburbs. I think they're just wonderful. It'd be really nice to get some of the little birds come back.
Still to come on Gardening Australia, Humphrey, Will and I are heading to the next garden to share more handy tips. Tammy shows us how to fit a lot into a small space. And we meet the keeper of a savage garden. There's nothing I love more than kicking back with a cup of tea and looking out over a beautiful garden, particularly if you've been out working in it. Now, Humphrey, we're going to jump in the truck and head off to the next job. But while we do that, Millie's got an absolute cracker of a garden for you to enjoy. Come on, are you ready? Maybe not.
Today, I'm heading to Basalt, a tiny settlement about 100 kilometres northwest of Melbourne. I'm here to meet artist and garden designer Lily Langham at her sprawling 5-acre hilltop property named the Three Chimneys, after the ruins here. I also want to discover just how her garden is the creative inspiration for her artwork.
Did a lot of this garden when I was pregnant with my second son. I remember, a couple of weeks before I gave birth to him, I was desperate to get it mulched. So I just mulched it on hands and knees. And, I was glad I did, because I could just relax when he was born. just watch it grow.
And was it just a little space that kind of eventually carved out with the drive and the way you were using it, or did you have a big design?
Well, no, it just evolved. I mean, because we were on this hill, there's no flat spots. You know, I was like, I need a veggie garden, you know, and I need flowers. So we cut in and I wanted a moon shape because I didn't want any straight lines. I just wanted to go with the actual lay of the land.
Going with the flow has seen Lily create a garden that is both pretty and whimsical, brimming with gorgeous perennials and grasses.
And then this was the veggie garden and potting shed still. And now it's become the nursery plot, the seed collection.
Nursery plot, so you're propagating a lot of things that you might spread around the garden here.
So I propagate for the gardens that I design. There's about 80% of my own plants.
But I guess if you're designing for people who are in similar conditions, then having those plants you know are going to work is key.
Yeah, it's fantastic knowing that there's some plants that I've got in so many different spots. So this is one of my first perennial grass garden. I feel like this was my most happiness moment was designing this garden. I mean, you know, there's lots of happy moments, but I really remember going, you know, getting really involved with the grasses, and I was learning so much while I was doing it, and kind of like all those instincts kind of just came out. And I was like, oh, here, and then I just watched it grow. And it's, you know, it's hardly had any weeds because I used so much mulch. Some of my favourite plants are plants that have got hoils.
Hoils? So that's the way the flowers are arranged around the stem?
That's right. So they come up the stem like that, and they're all like that. And there's so many different plants that have it, but the Phlomis is one of my favourites.
It'll remain a feature almost into winter.
That's right, and that's the thing with this garden is I don't cut things back a lot. So I don't do that big cut back early. I leave it really late. Oh. So right until, you know, end of August. So because I love the structure of the seed heads and they're just beautiful.
Obviously a planting that all intermingles, but you can still see these independent kind of pops, the echinopsis and that beautiful Achillea sitting above the other foliage.
Yeah, yep. I've kind of designed this so kind of you're involved in the garden instead of just like looking at it. That's why we've come through, you know, I haven't cut these things back. You know, it's like a big hug. It should be kind of like to kind of hold you within it.
Yeah. Here you got this miscanthus, and then I can see the lilies are about to erupt through it.
Yeah, these are the tiger lilies, and they can seed everywhere and be fantastic. I mean, they're not too bad. I love things coming through grasses.
And it's in the lower reaches of the property that Lily has created the simplest of gardens. I love the way you've basically made a garden with a mower out here.
Yeah, that's exactly what I say. I'm like, once you start mowing and sculpting the grasses, well, this is a garden, really.
It absolutely is. And grasses are one of your passions, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I'm a bit obsessed with grass. I love grass. I've always have.
So what's in this paddock? This isn't native grass, though, is it?
No, look, there is some native grass. There's some kangaroo grass in the lower bit of the paddock. There's so much in here. There is so many animals in here. There's so many insects. Right. And this is why I keep it, because I love to watch what happens and observe the seasons.
But it's within the confines of a studio that her artistic creations make sense of what's going on outside. It feels to me like everything in here is related to your garden and related to the same feelings that maybe you're trying to create for yourself out there.
You know, small things that we often don't see. So I use all that to inspire me to create. I just can't stop creating.
Tell me about this. I can see these are operculum, little eucalypt bud coverings.
Yep.
What is the inspiration for this?
With a lot of my work, the sculptural work, it's a moment, like a moment that I've experienced in nature. So this was sitting underneath the longleaf box down in the paddock and walking through the grass and hearing the sound of them popping off. And I was like, oh my God. they're beautiful. They're usually just, you know, disintegrate into the ground. So I sat there for a couple of hours and collected them. And so I've put them in a kind of, you know, something to hold dear. I'm doing a series at the minute representing grasslands and the animals that live there. And this is footsteps, actually walking through a grassland, and what's coming up is, you know, the grasses or where we tread. Yeah, I've used recycled copper wire to create little footsteps.
What do you love most about your garden?
Oh. Well, I love everything about it. I love the way that I have got so many places to sit where I can be still and I can listen. And I feel that that's a really important thing, is to be able to quieten everything down and just be in that space. It just recharges me. And it's just pure joy. It's like music, that song that just moves you so much. I'm constantly having those moments in the garden.
Okay, come on.
Oh. Someone's been here before. Well, this has got a totally different feel.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's slightly more relaxed and it's a bit softer. It's less structured and formal than the last garden. We've got spots of colour of the lavender, the windflowers.
I love your choice of cercis there.
The cercis, the forest pansy, is sort of the it tree at the moment because it's got such a beautiful form. And the idea is that it'll actually branch out over this paving.
Yeah.
So,
look
you know,
beautiful.
you'll have to sort of come under it when
underneath.
you're coming in the front
Yeah.
gate.
I could chat about this garden all day, but there's work to do. Will has some olive trees he wants to espalier.
So what we need to do is we need to actually snip off and just keep the laterals.
Yep.
But we've got to be really firm with them and only keep the ones that are going left and the ones that are going right. So I'm going to take off these ones, anything that's coming towards me, anything that's going up. Oh. And as you can see, very quickly, we're actually forming a really nice
flat
lateral growth along this warm brick wall.
Oh,
and then we can wire them up and it'll actually look really nice and it'll actually look quite formal against this sort of rambling undercarriage.
Yeah.
I think it's time for the wiring.
All right.
For the supports, Will uses marine-grade stainless steel that should last a lifetime and can be tightened if the cables sag.
So these look really good.
Yeah.
Nice and straight, they're nice and firm, they're really taut.
Yeah.
Now what we've got to do is decide which branches we're going to keep and which branches we're going to train onto those laterals. They're going to be quite brutal.
Yep.
We only want 4 laterals on either side of that central stem.
Yep. So that one can go there, this one can go.
Just when it puts on its new growth next year, it'll really start to branch out and then you get to come back and cut all the verticals off. And
yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think we've got a really straight vertical trunk and then we've got some really good laterals. And it's just such an interesting design piece and a talking point of the garden. And once it starts fruiting, well, yeah, it's game on. All right, job done.
Awesome.
We're going to crack on and we'll be back with more tips later in the show.
We don't often think about planting trees in small spaces, but in fact, there's loads of benefits. Their height creates canopy and shade over plants below, habitat to wildlife off the ground, as well as a dynamic aesthetic including flowers and even fruit. Dwarf citrus and fig trees can be happy for years in a large pot or small, deep bed with lots of compost, feeding and water. The native lemon myrtle tree will grow slow, so you can keep one in a big pot for a long time. Faster growing natives like wattles and blueberry ash are easy to prune back to small heights. And for something with ornamental leaves and flowers, try dwarf magnolia, crepe myrtle, and maples. They come in a variety of sizes and colours. To keep a tree small, it's best to prune it from a young age. That way, it's easier to maintain as they get bigger. For fruit trees like this dwarf nectarine, it's especially important as it improves airflow and reduces the likelihood of pests and diseases. Another pruning trick to get the look and benefits of a small tree is prune a shrub to look like one. For lush colour as well as screening, it's hard to beat camellias and lily-pillies. There are cultivars bred to live in narrow beds and pots, and they respond to lots of pruning. Make them look taller by removing the lower leaves and branches to reveal the trunk, and trim away any other major stems to emphasise the look of a small tree.
Getting a beautiful, crisp finish on your lawn like this is not difficult. It just needs a little bit of consistency and discipline. The first rule to follow is the 1/3 rule. Never cut off more than 1/3 at any given time. Do it in steps, particularly if you've left it grow too much. Now, the reason for that is if you cut in too deep, what you do is scalp the lawn, and that exposes the soil. If it exposes the soil, that means it can dry out, which will damage the grass plant itself. It also opens it up to erosion when it rains, but most of all, that opening is a chance for weeds to blow in and take hold. Now, there's so many different types of lawn. This is kikuyu, there's buffalo and cooch, which are your more traditional, but there's also a wonderful range of new lawns, particularly native grasses, which are worth giving a try. If you want to get good crops from your fruit trees, you need to fertilise regularly. Think about it. Every time you pick an apple like this, you're taking nutrients away that will need to be replenished. Apples like to get a feed of nitrogen and phosphorus because it promotes leaf and shoot growth. Generally, the best time to fertilise is in spring and right now in autumn. So what I've got here is some liquid fertiliser that I'm going to apply to each of these. But when you look at these espalier, their requirements are a bit different. You don't want to fertilise them too intensely because that will result in a big flush of growth, and in the process, you'll lose this beautiful framework that you're trying to achieve. So what you need to do is fertilise more regularly, but more lightly. Now, not all plants require this level of attention. In fact, some have evolved to find their own food. And in our next story, we're going to meet an expert in carnivorous plants. Check this out.
I'm not sure what first captured my imagination with carnivorous plants, but for some reason they stuck with me. Every time I went out into the bush, I looked for them. And as I learnt more through documentaries about how incredible they are and how diverse they are, that was it, I was hooked. My name is Greg Burke. I live in the Blue Mountains west of Sydney on acreage, and I have both the natural world around me, which I'm really passionate about, but I also grow and keep a diverse collection of carnivorous plants from all over the world. Of the 700 species found globally, there's almost 300 species found in Australia. This species is Drosera binata, found from north of Brisbane right the way round through southeastern Australia and into Western Australia and New Zealand. And it's a plant that's fascinated me since I was a kid. What's really special about these is their interactions with insects. These plants attract prey by producing little droplets of nectar, of mucilage on the leaves, and they glisten in the sun. Insects are attracted to them, and once they touch one of those sticky hairs, they're trapped, they're stuck to the leaf, and it's then digested with enzymes, very similar to a human stomach acid. Now, the bugs that live on these plants that don't get trapped, these are called sundew bugs. They're a type of assassin bug, and they can walk around without getting stuck, and they find these prey items that are captured. So here we have a fly that's been recently caught by the sundew, and the sundew bug has come up to it, and it is now probing into the fly to suck out the guts of the insect. There's a second sundew bug coming in to feed. So sometimes these sundew bugs will, if there's not a lot of prey items, they'll come in and fight each other for the prey, similarly to what predators do in the plains of Africa. I used to do a lot of bushwalking around the Royal National Park south of Sydney with my parents, and these sticky plants down at ground level, about my height, were just fascinating as a child, and I've maintained that fascination ever since. Seeing these glistening traps, the prey that they capture, just turning the tables on the natural world, the fact that they eat meat to survive, has always amazed me. Carnivorous plants evolved millions of years ago. Anywhere where there was low nitrogen, plants struggle to survive, and carnivorous plants have adapted to take advantage of this environment by capturing insect prey, and that's how they get their nitrogen. This is one of the most incredible carnivorous plants. Charles Darwin described this as the most wonderful plant in the world, and with good reason. It is, of course, the Venus flytrap, Dionaea muscipula, native to North America. And the way that this trap functions is the leaves have 3 trigger hairs on each side. And if an insect comes in and touches one of those trigger hairs, it starts an internal stopwatch. And if the insect comes and touches another trigger hair or the same trigger hair within 20 seconds, the trap snaps shut. Then it sets another stopwatch. And the prey, if it moves around further, the trap then shuts tighter and tighter until it eventually closes and forms a seal around the rim, and then it releases its digestive enzymes. Now, of course, these plants are fascinating to grow at home, and they're not actually that difficult. A shallow water tray, lots of sunlight, and the most important thing to remember is don't throw out the fly trap. These plants tend to go dormant in winter, and then in spring up will come new growth. During high school, I didn't realise that really there was a pathway into botany or horticulture that was easily accessed. So I became an electrician. My father was an electrician, and actually it was a really good way to fund a lot of my trips. And then I moved into botanic gardens, a big jump from the electrical trades, but it seemed like the right choice for me. And then once I was within the botanic garden space, it was plants, plants, plants. This here is the marsh pitcher plant from the genus Helianthera. Now, these are unique in that they've got a folded leaf that forms a vase shape. Well, these plants are found in nutrient-poor soils. They're found in the northern part of South America. They produce a sweet nectar similar to that of a flower, which will attract the prey. And once the prey comes to feed, it hunts further down into the pitcher for sweeter nectar, and downward pointing hairs make it slide down into the digestive fluid below. And that digestive fluid is kind of similar to human stomach acid. So once the prey is in there, it's slowly digested by the plant, and then it's ready to catch another prey. Well, the relationships that these plants have with animals is incredibly complex. Frogs often live in and around the pitchers and rarely get caught. So they can shelter in the pitchers themselves and then steal the prey from the plant. And often they'll defecate in the plant, and so they're sort of providing a fertiliser as payment for their free meal. My favourite or most memorable experience plant hunting has been a trip to Southeast Asia in central Borneo, where myself and researchers from Malaysia and Germany travelled upriver for 2 days. Then we drove in our four-wheel drive for a couple of days and then hiked through the jungle. The first night that we slept on the mountain, we didn't see any clouded leopards, but when we awoke in the morning, there were leopard footprints around our tent. You could hear the gibbons calling in the morning. We saw amazing rare frogs and all these incredible things, and that all built up to us climbing the mountain and discovering a new pitcher plant hours before we got to the summit of this mountain. These are the bladderworts in the genus Utricularia. This is an incredible group of plants, about 300 species found around the globe, and there's a centre of diversity in Northern Australia. But these in front of me are South American species. The most incredible thing about these plants is the way that they trap their prey, in that they have tiny little bladders that have sensitive hairs in front of them and a trap door. An insect prey or a mosquito larvae or something small will come into contact with those trigger hairs, and the plant will open up, suck the prey inside, and then snap shut and slowly digest the prey. And during that process, the traps pull 60 Gs. And to put that in perspective, an astronaut pulls about 9 Gs when going into space. So if we were subjected to those forces, we'd be torn apart. For the last 14 or so years, I've been breeding selectively between different species of South Americans to produce some of these beautiful flowers. These plants are actually quite easy to grow. A shallow water tray is all they need, a windowsill or outside in a sunny spot, and they'll grow really well year round. These things flower for up to 9 months of the year too, which is just beautiful. I think the best value that I've got from the plant collection over the last few years is that when I walk into my tunnel house, it kind of feels like I'm in another world. It feels like I'm back in Borneo. And to be amongst the plants, I forget about all the troubles around me and focus on them, you know, study them, really get involved, and everything else goes away.
Well, that's it. I think we're pretty much done here for the day.
Thank you for letting me tag along with you and Humphrey. It's been such a treat. Tell me, how do you feel when you get to the end of a day and you've been on the tools?
At the end of the day, you can turn around and see what you've done. There's real purpose and there's reward in how hard you work and the simplicity but the detail of the task. I love what I do and I take a lot of pride in my work. You know, the harder the day, the better the end of it, but it's absolutely fantastic and I wouldn't have it any other way, especially with my my sidekick by my side.
Well, we have had so much fun, and while the fun here has come to an end, the fun for all of you is about to begin, because here's your list of jobs for the weekend. Cool temperate gardeners, as winter plantings are going in, keep soils healthy and diseases at bay by practicing crop rotation, avoiding planting veggies from the same family in the same spot for a few seasons. For example, the beds that have held heavy-feeding tomatoes are now the perfect patch to pop in some light-feeding alliums, including leeks, chives and onion varieties like Sheffield Red and Cream Gold. Remove and bin any mummified fruit still hanging on peach and nectarine trees. This will help prevent reinfestation of fungal spores responsible for devastating brown rot. If you're keen, plant broad beans. Simply push seeds into fertile, slightly alkaline soil, water deeply, and don't water again until shoots appear. Have a go at layering with salvias and sages. Simply mound soil around sections of branches and by spring, roots will have formed. Simply cut from the parent, plant up and enjoy. With the weather cooling and the soil still warm, it's the perfect time to establish some native plants. Contact your local nursery or land care group for a list of local natives perfect for your place. In the subtropics, autumn means chickweed, and while it can be rampant, it's also useful. The leaves are edible, great in salads, and as the name suggests, chickens love it. The Costa and hairpin Banksias are flowering now. There's loads of cultivars and forms available. Why not plant one of these beautiful bird magnets at your place? Have a grow of a yacon, a tuberous root veggie from Peru. With foliage and flowers similar to the Jerusalem artichoke, yacon tubers can be eaten raw or cooked and taste similar to nashi pear. In the tropics, keep eyes peeled for fungal issues that appear after summer rains and look out for increases in aphid, scale and mealybug numbers as temperatures drop. Flowering now is the lovely lemon myrtle, Bacchausia citriodora. Its fragrant, creamy white flower is a beacon for butterflies and bees. Tip prune after flowering to prevent seed set. Perfect for pickling, drop in some daikon seeds. These large radishes need a fair bit of space, so leave 40 centimetres between each seed when sowing, and as they grow, backfill to cover the tops. In arid zones, April is a rocking month in the garden. Get rolling this weekend with a round of winter veg. Both broccoli and cauliflower can be sown now and we'll rock it away. Plant everlasting daisies now for a stunning spring display. Scattering seeds over cultivated garden beds will create swathes of colour and a wonderful wild meadow in a few months. For the Nyungar communities of Western Australia, now is the season of Gerang, signified by red flowers, including those of the Corymbia ficifolia and the red rust and seed cones forming on the male and female she-oaks. Get into the garden this weekend and make the most of this mid-autumn weather. As always, you can connect with the Gardening Australia family on our social pages on Facebook and Instagram. Well, that is a wrap from us. I hope you've enjoyed walking in the footsteps of a professional horticulturist and garden designer for the day. We've learnt plenty of tips along the way, haven't we, Humphrey? It's been great, buddy. I look forward to seeing you next week. Here's what we've got in the pipeline. Haven't we? We've got plenty coming up, haven't we?
I'm visiting a food relief project growing healthy, fresh food for those in the community most in need.
It might be a bit cold for some of you, but now is a great time to be planting for autumn colour, and I've got some beauties to show you.
And I'm meeting a couple who were more than qualified to design their own garden, and it is absolutely delightful. But you'd expect so, because they're both landscape architects.